We Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Mujer de Éxito Unbounded, Woman of Success Without Limits. My name is Marti Angel. I am your anfitriona, your host, and I am so incredibly grateful for each and every one of you, my listeners. And today, I am even more excited because I have the jefa, the everyday jefa. Okay, this young lady has, you always say, I always look up and I say, Spirit, bring to me whoever is for my highest good and that I can bless their lives as well, right? And so then this woman just appears in my life, and she is an amazing woman. I've been following her on Instagram, trolling her, and she is amazing. I am so incredibly grateful for each and every one of you to hear her story. My fellow Latina podcaster, Bessy Martinez from the Everyday Jefa show, I believe, right? And Bessy, ¿cómo estás? Tell us how you are today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for, those kind words, for going live with me earlier on Instagram, catching everybody up to come in, make sure that they swing into this part of the internet, to be able to share more about, stories of everyday women. I mean, that's what I am. I'm your everyday Latina out there making HEPA moves. I know it's been a coined figure of speech to say Hefa, but honestly, Hefa is not just a boss in entrepreneurship. We're bosses of our own lives. We make Hefa moves, we make big decisions in our everyday lives, and that's basically what I am. I'm just another human being out in the world just trying to see it be better.
That is amazing. Man is amazing. But let me just share a little bit about you. You are a multifaceted Salvadoran community builder, entrepreneur, and creative. And currently, you are a mujerpreneur, who is what I serve, right? And you have created an organization that, aims to empower bosses in leadership and entrepreneurship. And the beauty about this is the key is, you lead a foundation and a nonprofit dedicated to empowering Latina women. So you and I are both in the same arena. Not only are we Latina podcasters, but you're in Austin, I'm in San Diego. You're a Latina leader. You're an Austin Latina leader. I'm hoping that I am a San Diego Latina leader. That's what I call myself. And, I've been around San Diego for a very long time. Let me ask you this, beautiful. How long have you been in Austin?
I've been 4 years. I moved here during the pandemic because of the pandemic. We got relocated. My husband used to work for the airline industry. He's retired, but at the time the travel industry got hit obviously with the pandemic, and so they started restructuring all kinds of things, reorganizing, and we got the opportunity. We've always loved Austin. There's just something about Austin that just always made us feel at home. It's just weird and unique and beautiful, and sometimes you forget that you're in Texas when you come to Austin. So when we were given the opportunity during the pandemic to come and move to this area, we took it.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. And where did you come? Where did you move to Austin from?
So I was living in the Dallas area at the time. We were there for about 8 years. Prior to that, we had been living in the DC metro area. I was there for about 12 years. But when I migrated from El Salvador, I migrated to the Rio Grande Valley, which is the tip of the Texas as possibly as you can get, borderline to Mexico. And so I was raised there all the way through high school. And then when I graduated high school, it's when I moved to the Washington area. And that was a huge culture shock because anybody that is from the Rio Grande Valley, where it's predominantly Mexican or Mexican American, moving to the East Coast and seeing that large impact of diversity was kind of what set off unexpectedly, kind of where I am now here in the Austin area with the work that I'm doing.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love listening to that. Um, Let me share a little bit about mine was the opposite. So when my kids were younger, uh, in the mid 90s. So now I've dated myself, but that's okay. In the mid 90s, my husband got an opportunity to actually work we lived on the island, on the big island, Hawaii, in Kona. And we went from San Diego to Kona. They didn't even know what tortillas were.
I'm
I
sure.
mean, I would go to the store and I would ask for tortillas and they would look at me like, no. But I remember so clearly going to this, farmer's market. And when I went there, it was a sea of brown faces that all, they could have passed for Latinos, but they were all Pacific Islanders, Hawaiian and Puerto Ricanos and all kinds of beautiful brown people around. And I was like smiling. And I told my husband, I said, I've never seen so many brown people in one place. This is so cool. And it was amazing, unbeknownst to me that they would start to speak pidgin and I wouldn't know what the heck they were talking about. But, but yeah, so moving to a different area takes guts. And now let me ask you on this move, because you're a mujer de éxito, unbounded. The reason that I love it so much is because unbounded just means without limits, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you continue to go and you're successful in your own right. And I am determined to share the stories of people and what they view success as being, right? So as a mujerpreneur, how do you view success? What is success to you? ¿Qué es?
So is the fact that I accomplished it. It doesn't matter if it turned out right or if it turned out wrong. I completed it. I took the initiative. I took that first step. I got out of my own way and I did it. I just completed it. I made it either, I refused some, even though I probably, fired myself and quit a couple of times along the journey. But ultimately I finished it. I completed it. And that's both in my professional life and that's also in my personal life. Like I was, there weren't too many examples for me to look up to growing up other than probably what I saw in media, of what was media back then, or magazines, or sometimes even novelas, if I could be just as curious and creative as I possibly could. So to me, just knowing that I get to do this and that this is my life, that to me is success. I've made it because nobody would have ever told me otherwise, that I could do something that was not traditional to how I was raised. Um, and that it was possible, that it's okay to do things, color outside the box, to do things that are not typically the norm. That it's okay to speak up and view my opinion and my feelings and my emotions because I am a human being and they're valid. So to me, that's been every pinpoint a success for me, is being the fact that I've done it and I've seen myself on the other side.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And one question that I'm going to ask you that people always ask me is that when you identify as a Latina, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are from one single country,
Mm-hmm.
right? That doesn't mean that you're just from Mexico. Like people are like, "Oh, are you Latino?" But yes, where are Latinas from? Oh, and then you start to share the plethora of countries that are quote unquote Latinas. But
Yes.
how do you share your story when somebody says, "Oh, you're Latina"?
I would say that even to this day, I'm still evolving as to what that definition means. One, because I think we all have the right to feel seen, heard, and supported however we choose, and that's however we identify. And the identifications are actually changing with time as well. Like I'm now learning that I have a lot of indigenous roots, especially coming from, El Salvador. Versus the only thing growing up that I knew I was Hispanic. And that's as far as it went. You're Hispanic, and period, point blank. And as time has progressed and as I got more curious to so many things about my identity, I started to learn about being Latino. And then all I ever heard was just, well, you're just Latino. And then I'm like, oh, well, there's a female version to that as well. That's being Latina. So what does that really necessarily mean? And so I tell people that, with times comes different, not just challenges, but also questionable things of our identities. And it's really not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing because it's really helping us be innovative and progressive, because we're expanding our minds to what we had been told or what only things that we had seen. So when people ask me, first and foremost, I'm Salvadorian. So de Salvador, whether you choose to put an identification of it being Latino or Hispano, I'm Salvadorian because that's where I was born. And then I say, but I identify as a Latina. Um, and then I kind of go into my explanation as well. We've got the Latina community, the Latinx community, and these are just really different forms of saying that we are from, Latin America and just geographically situated in different places or came from different parts of the world. But I always say, I can tell you my definition of how I see myself. If you want to see it differently, you have, all due respect, that's, your opinion. This is just how I've always viewed my life to be. And I'm always an open book to be able to continue learning more about myself.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And it's so important. I love how you said, I continue learning about myself, because I always have said about me, I'm a lifelong learner. But people look at me and they go, "Oh, because I was born in the US." So I'm first generation, right? I was born in the US. My parents came in from Mexico. And but yet my great grandparents came from Europe, right, and so into Mexico. And so there's that mix of everything, right? And so it's so important to understand that Latina, Latino, Latine, Hispano, whatever it is, doesn't just come from one geographical location of the world. There are many locations out there, and we all just come together. And the reason that I love Latina is because it seems to embrace a little bit more Hispano también. I can go from being Latina to being Hispana, whatever it is. And even though I was born here in the US, my parents sent me to college over there for a while, and I was dancing, in Mexico for a while. So I learned a lot of the culture, even though I didn't live there, right? And it's just so amazing to me to have so many people not be aware of the diversity that there is in the Latino community.
Mm-hmm.
But what I love too, and I want to lead to the next question with this, what I love is that now I'm seeing much more unity coming from the diverse Latin Latin American countries. We're here in the US, and at least I know that there's a group of us out there wanting to make a difference for those of you that are coming up the pike, because pretty soon, as my mom would say, ya me voy al cerro, right? And we've got you guys to leave behind. And I don't want to leave behind that legacy of the alacran, or of the, whatever it is, the crabs, or whatever it is that, don't worry, they'll kill themselves, because they're always, trying to one up each other and pull each other out of the. And I remember that so vividly, and I have always fought against that. I purposely seek out, to buy local Latinas, that's why it's a Mujer de Éxito, because I want to empower the Latina woman to share your story, so that it stays with somebody that might actually think that they're all alone, but maybe not. ¿verdad?
Mhm.
So now the question that I have for you is how you're a community, you're a community powerhouse. How do you share in the community? What is it, what's your message out there?
Well, our slogan for here, for the community that we have here in the Austin area, is called Unidas Somos Mejores, because we are better together. And I realized that when I started it during the pandemic because I was looking for community when I moved to the Austin area. I couldn't meet people, so I just really turned to what everybody else was doing, and that was online, social media, the lives, those types of things. And I didn't find something that resonated with me where I was in my journey at that moment in my life, and so something inside me said, yeah, you can't find it, create it or become it. And I had actually heard that same voice and that same spirit come across when I first started my very first business, which was photography. And it was because I was not seeing the things that I wanted to see when it came to visualization. So I have a son that plays baseball, and I didn't want to be the mom taking pictures with just my camera, my phone camera. I wanted to something that I could take, that I could see through my own eyes, the way I saw the world, the way I saw him and his journey in his sports as a mother. So I took it upon myself to teach myself how to use this camera. Same thing happened when I came here. It's I created something and I became an advocate of it. As you can't find it, then it doesn't mean that it's not for you. It just means that it's okay to not have to, always mold yourself to fit somewhere. You can fit perfectly where you are and just create what it is that you're wanting to create yourself. Just get out of your own way, so to speak. And so I also became a huge advocate of I walk the walk, but I also talk the talk. So I not only empower Latinas here in my community and just really Latinas anywhere that will give me the opportunity to speak about it, but I also, talk to talk. So we implement Latina owned or Latina co-owned or Latina innovated, anything of that kind of thing, and almost everything that we do. So we're always thinking about not just who we serve, but we're also thinking about what is it, the resources and the tools that we currently have today, but how can we start molding what we want to see for the future with what we have today? And we start to empower people. I was actually asked by like a 10, 11-year old girl, immigrant girl, that I got to speak in front of a group of these girls, about 30 girls, and one of them asked me was like, "How do you empower Latinas? You say you empower Latinas, but how do you do it?" I said, "Well, one, I create a space where they are safe and they can come authentically themselves. There is no judgment, and there's no judgment from the minute you walk in that door. Meaning, we're just happy to see you here, and we want to make sure that the minute you walk in that door you feel that energy. And so when people leave these spaces, whether it's a meetup, it's a conference, it's a workshop, that these women are feeling like they are being seen. Because why? Because we're representing what they want to see in the world through the people that are speaking, through the content that we're creating, through the message that we're relaying. It's really like we want you to feel seen, heard, and supported, and this is how we're going to do it. But not only that, I'm also doing the same thing too. I'm also working on myself. I'm also entering into spaces where I want to feel seen, heard, and supported, because that way I can turn around and I can say, hey, I'm also getting the same, dose of the same medicine elsewhere, because I think community needs community too. And I replicate that in almost everything that I do. And then I tell people, at the end of the day, it's about putting the ball in your court and you make the decisions, but just know that we are listening to you. We are hearing you. We are asking questions to see how we can better ourselves, how we can better serve you. What are your needs and your wants that we can probably implement, or maybe we can start working on to be able to implement and walk people through the process and be very transparent, very vulnerable, which is something not a lot of people do, especially on social media. And I am all like, I have nothing to hide. I'm obviously not going to show you my entire, life behind the scenes, but I'm going to show you enough so that you understand that I'm just here going through the journey just as much as you are.
That's beautiful. Hermosa, 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 hermosa. And being an educator, it's so, or being I guess I am still an educator, online educator, but I went through elementary school, middle school, high school, and college and being an assistant principal and being, and it was so important for me to be always trying to, to look for somebody that looked like me. I know people look at me and go, well, but you don't look that way, because my mom was blonde and blue-eyed, right? Because she was, part German and stuff. But the heart, I remember saying to my mom, el corazón lo tengo Mexicano. And she would say the same thing. Es mi gente. And I would say, I would tease her and I would say, Mama, but your gente is in Germany. And she would say, no, 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 no. Mi gente está en Mexico, right? And it was so cute because, she was always, discriminated against, opposite, right? So to the point that my mom could not speak a lick of English, but because she was blonde, very light skinned, and blue eyed, and she could pass for a gringa, they actually gave her a high school diploma. And she was like, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know. She said, I was just following all the other girls. And I was like, Mom, they gave you that and you didn't take any classes or any. She said, I took the classes. I didn't know what I was doing, but I got a diploma at the end. And I'm going like, wow. And so it's just amazing what we've come through, as you say, to create that space. Right. And I love that you're creating that space because, like I said, I wanted to see somebody that looked like me or how I perceived myself. And because my dad was part Greek, I tan really easy. I mean, just to tell you that when I was little, they used to call me La Negra. Because I was always out in the sun. I'm a sun bunny. I was always out in the sun and, and my mom was blonde and she never wanted to go out in the sun. So there was it's stark day and night. Right. And I remember so vividly, thinking that I was, this little Mexicanita, this indígena. And I wanted to see people like me. I wanted to see people like me teaching me. I wanted to see people like me on the TV. I wanted to see people like me, in the movie theaters. And I never did. And I never did. Yeah. And so, like you said, if you don't see it, then you've got to become it. Right. And so I just began and and took myself. And even though people would tell me, why are you, don't brand yourself as the Latina biz coach. Hey, I taught in the business department for a very, very long time. And, in college, why can't I share my, expertise out there? Because, it was, and it's so amazing that some of the gurus, I paid pretty money to two very famous gurus that if I mentioned their name, you would know right away who they were, that told me, do not brand yourself as the Latina biz coach. This was pre-pandemic, right? It was like, oh my gosh. So what have you run across? What have you, how do you see things there where you were like surviving and then you went from surviving to thriving? Give me one example.
Assimilation. Because it was one of those, if even for myself being raised in South Texas, where, predominantly a lot of them are Mexican or Mexican American, and me being from another country, sometimes just not even saying, everybody just presumed that you were Mexicano or Mexican American. Not that you came from another country, especially, back then in the like 90s and so forth. It wasn't very commonly heard. And so being able to say, okay, well, for starters, my mom raised me with the calladita te ves más bonita, but it wasn't really necessarily in the sense that, don't speak your truth, don't speak up for yourself. It was more of because our story, the way we came to this country, she was afraid it was going to be frowned upon. We did come illegally, by the time I hit high school and when people were actually paying attention, I was obviously had already gotten my citizenship and stuff like that. But growing up, that was my mom's biggest fear is if you say where you're from, people are going to deny you. People are going to reject you, even though we are all Hispanic. You look just like me. What do you mean you don't, I'm not just like you. And so it was kind of one of those confusions. So I said, okay, well, if that's going to make life easier, then I'm just going to assimilate and just not say anything and stay quiet and just carry on. And Bessy is Bessy personality wise, but when it comes to my storyline and how I got to this country, I'm just going to keep it to myself. And I kept a lot of that to myself growing up all the way into well into my young adult life. And assimilating and saying, hey, my name is not very common. Bessy comes from the original um, English name Elizabeth. My name is Bessy. It's not short for anything. So a lot of people would assume that I was
Mm.
American when they would hear me on the phone. And then they would see my last name, and they'd question it because my maiden name was Farella, which is actually Italian. And then it was just like this big confusion. Then they see me and they're like, oh, wait, you're not. And I'm like, because I can speak proper English. I can't, you just presume that. So it was a lot of it was questioning my identity. And it was also, well, if I don't say very much about myself, then I can continue working my way up in the corporate ladder just through my skill set and not through my identity until I
Mm.
finally said, I can't do this anymore because what I've done is I am continuously dimming my own light of my full potentiality for somebody else because they makes them uncomfortable. And I'm not here to make people uncomfortable. I'm here to, with my gifts and my talents that were given to me at birth, these are the
Empower.
things that I know I can do. So therefore, no, I'm not going to continue doing this anymore for somebody else. When I can do it for my community, it's going to be even more well received. And I don't have to, I don't have to sacrifice my identity anymore because mi gente understands where I'm coming from. They get it now. It's, the mindset has shifted completely. We are no longer being, raising our children where calladito te ves más bonito, más bonita.
Mm-mm.
It's, proudly wear your scars on your shoulders and, the hoops and the whole nine. And that you are okay and we love you just the way that you are. And so that's when I finally said, enough is enough. I need to start speaking my truth. I need to start speaking about my history, about my story. But at the same time, I need to also elevate because we still do have in our community
Right.
the crabs in the mindset, mentality. But I don't want to be part of that. I want to be part of the change. So the only way that's going to happen is I have to be the change. And when I put my foot down and said, enough is enough, this is the route that I want to do. It's going to be unconventional, it's going to be untraditional, but it's going to be okay because I have a community behind me that is in this, sees things the same way. And together we're going to figure this out.
That's so beautiful. It's so true. It is very, very true. I remember, like I said, when we started speaking, I'm about 2 generations ahead of you. And I remember so very, very clearly um, in first grade, Mrs. Collins, who I can say her name now because she's, she was old back then. So probably she's listening to me up there somewhere. But Mrs. Collins, my first grade teacher, she was old. She wore these little old shoes. She had this gray hair and these dark, big, big blue eyes. And I'll never forget. We came in from recess and it was time to put our head down. I put my head down and this kid starts talking right next to me. And he's talking, talking, talking. And then she yells out, who was that? Or who is that? And so I raised my hand and I said, it's him, right? Not knowing that I wasn't supposed to do that, right? Or at least not in her classroom. I've already asked him to be quiet. It's him. And she comes by and she slapped the crap out of me right across the face. I was like, I went home and I had her hand on my face, pintada.
Wow.
That's how hard she slapped
Mm.
me. And so, and then when we went back to the principal, he said, well, you're not supposed to be speaking Spanish. And that's why she has the power to do that to you.
Mm.
And I was like, oh my God. I was like, okay, and I looked at my mom and little me and my little morenita body, and everything. So I took my mom and by the hand and I said, I want you to see the teacher. So after we got out of there, we walked over and the teacher, I said, Mrs. Collins, this is my mom. And my mom, looked just like her. Blonde hair and light eye, the light blue eyes and the skin and everything. And she looked at my mom. I remember her looking at my mom from the feet all the way up. And then she said the most racist thing that I remember. She said, "Your father must be black."
Wow.
And I was like, I was a little kid, I was like in first grade, what, 5, 6, maybe, and it was like, and my mom just looked at her and she goes, "That doesn't even merit an answer." And then she said, "Vieja cagona," and then we walked away. So it's like, okay. I said, "You go, mom. You called her." And so that was the story. My mom called, her. But it was, it's so sad because I'll still see kids, in education, and I'll see teachers, and why do we do that? Why do we allow that to even happen?
Yeah.
We should not be shamed. We shouldn't be body shamed. We shouldn't be language shamed. We shouldn't be shamed at all.
Mhm.
We come to school to learn, to feel like you create in your communities a safe place.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that is so crazy that it's still,
Yes.
many, many moons, we're still,
Still something happening.
yeah, and we're still struggling to make it a
Mhm.
perfect world for our children. Let me
Yes.
ask you this. You have beautiful children, ¿verdad?
Mhm. Yes, 2 boys, 2 teen boys.
Oh, teens. So let me
Yes.
ask you this. What is, how do you, if they would have come to you and say, "Hey, mom, because of my last name, or I think it's because of my last name, I didn't get in," or whatever, how would you handle that?
Well, I've had that conversation with them. Their first names are not a traditional Latino name that you would see or that you would hear. And it was more of my way of being rebellion on, I want them to have their own identity. I want them to have, as they grow older, that people know them for who they are, not because of their namesake. And so that's kind of what's played into, their role. Our last name, of course, is Martinez. And so it's very, very traditional last name, so it's presumed very fairly quickly um, that, they're Latinos, they're Hispanos. And so I've told them in the past, look, for just being men, you already have 1 foot ahead of us, of the women, unfortunately, still to this day. So, but because you guys are brown boys, you are going to face adversity. It is very different than it was when I was growing up your age. It's, it a little bit, things have changed, but then there's still things that we go backwards on still, in this country or in the world in general, where things are just still not accepted. Um, However, just remember that other people's opinions do not, is not your identification. Who you are is who you are, and it's represented by your actions and by your words, not by somebody else's opinion of what they seem to believe of who you are based on a last name or based on the color of your skin. It's your actions that are going to speak louder than anybody else's words or opinions. So as long as you can hold yourself accountable and live up to owning your mistakes, however you choose to do that, and you just really live your life out to be better than what you felt you were seeing it as, it's, that's probably going to be in a way the softest cushion to be able to navigate through life, because you're still going to get the racist comments, you're still going to get the microaggressions, you're going to confront those things, but ultimately how you handle them and how you choose to handle them is really going to give you the identity of who you are. And it's not going to matter where your mother's from, it's not going to matter what your last name is. People are always going to think what they want to think, and that is, I always told, even my team members too, I'm always like, what other people think is none of your business. That is more them than it is you. It's their perception. So let that just be what sits. Whatever your opinion is, now that's on you, not on somebody else. And the same thing I teach with my kids too. When I tell them, emotional intelligence, especially for Latino women, is Latino men, is not something that was spoken about growing up. Talking about mental health, especially in the Latino community, these are all things that I am like, I advocate for them now, that I say, I'm just trying to see the world for you to be better through you, so that when you walk out the door, you contribute to the goodness that we want to see in the world.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Let me ask you this. Let's go into a little bit of business. How many people are on your team?
We have a total of 13.
13 people, and they work for what's the name?
13. So they are the majority of them are on our leadership. So we have an brand ambassador, and then we have an events and market specialist, and then everybody else, and then there's myself, and then we have about 10 ambassadors, and they're all volunteers. So what they do is they host here in Central Texas, they host monthly meetups in their prospective cities. And we actually just piloted this program this year where we were tapping into every city in Central Texas because it was getting really hard to reach people by them coming to us. And we said, no, we're doing a disservice to our community if, not everybody wants to go into the big city. Nobody wants to go into
Right.
Austin. It's, traffic and parking and stuff like that. How about we meet them where they are? And so we just said, hey, we put out a calling saying, hey, if anybody's interested in being part of our ambassador program, you just have to host one meeting a month meetup. We call them meetups. We don't call them networking events. We feel that networking is just something that naturally happens when you put people in under one roof
Mm-hmm.
and share who they are. So we just do meetups. They do anything that they could possibly creatively design. So we've had anything from like axe throwing. We've had coffee meetups. We've had going out to dance, Latin, salsa night, who knows, whatever they want, again, meeting our community. What is our community asking for? And if, that's something that that ambassador can facilitate, then they go ahead and they host it. And then us as an organization, an overall organization, we hold like the bigger stuff, the bigger partnerships, the bigger, broader scaled conferences, summits, workshops, those types of things.
And that is all under the guise of the HEFA headquarters? Is that what you call it?
So my brand is the Everyday Jefa, and JefaHQ, which is what we consider to be the platform of everything entrepreneurship and leadership, is one of three pillars from the overall landscape of the foundation. So the Latina Foundation is the one that serves to be able to support Latina startup entrepreneurs, but it's also about meeting the community where they are. So we like to look at it as a one-stop shop for Latinas to meet them where they are, either personally or on as entrepreneurs. So there's the community platform, which is Austin Latinas Unidas. There is the physical space, or ultimately virtual space at this moment, which is the Jefa HQ. And then the initiatives, which is like our fundraising galas, our accelerator programs to be able to teach Latina women how to start up their business and get them going, to be successful entrepreneurs.
So HEFA HQ is an organization dedicated to helping everyday women unleash their inner bosses at a national
Mhm.
level through social resources available in their communities. Amazing, amazing. When you started this, were you the only one?
Yes, I was. I used to tell people I'm the team of three, the me, myself, and I team.
Hey, I like that. I'm going to say that to myself. Actually,
Yeah, I
now
was part of
now
the
my
team myself.
team is ChatGPT. So
Oh, yes, AI has decided to be kind of our secret assistant.
yes, yes. I have a very private, introverted, secret assistant. Thank you very much. But
Hmm.
that's amazing. Okay, so let me just ask you. Then you, for the women in Austin, for las mujeres in Austin that are looking for, maybe they're listening to us, maybe they're looking for some way to get a hold of you, how or to be or to get some information from your HQ corporation nonprofit. Where do they find you?
Well, I would say the best way to find everything that I do and everything that I've created is on either LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. It's the Everyday Jefa, Jefa. I list everything that I have on there, from the websites to our social media platforms and everything that you can find, and what each each platform and each business facilitates. That way people have a clear understanding. Okay, if I'm looking for resources and connections with women in leadership or entrepreneurship, I know I need to go to JefaHQ. If I'm looking for a community level space, then they know that Latinas Unidas is going to be that space. If they're looking to be able to join our accelerator program to start their businesses and take them from ideation into reality, they know that that's going to be the nonprofit space. So everything is literally like written out under the Everyday Jefa name, either like I said, on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn.
And how long did it take you to come up with this? Obviously, I know here in California, if you do a nonprofit, it's it's an entity in and of itself. So I don't know how it is in Texas, but how did you decide to do that? And did you do it by yourself, or was there another mujercita with you? Or
So everything started from Austin Latinas Unidas. When I started hearing people's stories here locally, I started going, okay, if these women are looking for this, how are we not also crossing, resources and ideas and collaborations with people outside of Austin and vice versa, which is
Mm,
where Hefa HQ came into place. I wanted it more of, a platform that you could get what you needed in one location, no matter where you were around the world. And so it was like kind of part of the journey, instead of, I didn't want to change Austin Latinas Unidas' name because that would, that one was specific for this community that I'm living in. But I wanted to also be able to integrate both at a national level and local level and intertwine, ideas and stuff like that. So that's where HEPA HQ was created. And then I started learning a lot as I started building this up, and entering spaces with other leaders and other entrepreneurs and other people running nonprofits, that there was still a gap when it came to supporting and funding, specifically for women. There's less than 2% of funding that goes into women entrepreneurs. Minority is even less. And so when I heard those stagnant the statistics, it broke my heart. And so we hear the startup community, and the startup community a lot of times has been when you've been around for a couple of years and you're already bringing an X amount of revenue. That's when people look at you to start investing in you. And I said, well, if you think about it, the word startup means that you are literally starting up something.
mhm.
So why don't we take it to the grassroots level of what the word means and start these women up? Let's take them from their ideation into reality by giving them, because within the first 2 to 5 years, that's why a lot of entrepreneurs
Yeah.
aren't able to really launch their businesses, because they don't have the tools and the resources or the funding that they need to be able to succeed in their own prospective industries. So if we build something for them, which is basically like a blueprint, a business blueprint for them, and provide them with all of these things, then the likeliness of them being able to succeed, or have businesses that don't reach, become minimal. And then that's when the nonprofit started. We actually started the nonprofit back in October of last year. And I did have some help after doing, Austin Latinas Unidas and branching out into other areas of other things. I came across other Latina nonprofit leaders, and I started asking questions because, again, I'm all about one, intuition, and two, being intentional with what it is that I produce and what I want to do and the ideas that I have. I didn't want to create something that if it's already there, I want to be able to support what's already there. But this particular thing, I was noticing that there was still a lack of, and I wanted to
Mm.
be part of that space. And so I asked questions. I said, how did you get this done? So I did have, by the time I started the nonprofit, I had women that were part of my community, that were giving me the do's and the don'ts, that were helping me fill out the paperwork, that were reviewing my applications, that were saying, hey, this is where you need to be applying for grants once you get there, or and they were just educating me. And for me, it's always been about all of the information I receive, I just turn around and I spill it right back out to my community, because I'm not a gatekeeper. I don't believe in that type of stuff. For me, the more information we know, the better world that we can create. And so, because I was able to do that, I've been able to hit the ground running from the minute we launched to now, and be able to start up 6 businesses in the state of Texas. So we started 6 Latina business owners, 2 in Houston, 2 in San Antonio, 2 in the Rio Grande Valley. And after doing that, we came back and said, okay, after listening to them, I'm all about the data, I'm all about the research. I'm all about the feedback and meeting people where they are. We said, okay, we now need to create a class that gives each piece of what the overall ecosystem to entrepreneurship is, and create a class, a 12-week class. It's going to cover each topic from AI to mental health to how to pitch your business from the beginning. So that way you can start successfully launching that idea that you have. But I don't think I would have ever gotten able to launch my nonprofit had it not been for the women that supported me from the get-go.
Mm. Yeah, juntas podemos más. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
always say, right? That's my hashtag. Juntas podemos
Yep.
más. Let your
Yep.
Latinaness show, and juntas podemos más. So,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
so you, the Latina Foundation and Austin Latinas Unidas are part of you. And let me ask you this: there's a freebie you're going to give to all of all of our listeners. I say our, right? Um,
Yes.
so what's it going to be? What is it? What is it? What is this freebie that you're going
So
to
they'll be
do?
getting a free discovery call. What that means is we're going to discover what your need is, and I'm going to help you map out what it is that you're going to need to be able to launch it. So let's say you have an idea, you're going to sit down with me, we're going to brainstorm for about an hour. I'm going to listen to the things that you are trying to achieve your goals, because again, I'm all about sharing is caring, and I'm all about everything that I've learned. If I can save you some ganas and I can save you some tears, I am
Yeah.
here for it. If I can save one person from any of those types of experiences, then I've done my job. A lot of the times I always get asked questions like, can I pick your brain? Can I pick your brain? So that's exactly what we're going to do during this Discover calls. We're going to, have them fill out the form so that way I have a better understanding, so that when we sit, we're very mindful of each other's time, and we make sure that when you walk away, you know exactly in what direction you're heading, and it's going to be at no cost.
Que lindo. I love it. I love it. Thank you so I could ask you all kinds of questions all day long, but I know that you're a mom as well, and you got to pick up your kids. So I just want to say, gracias, hermosa. Thank you so much. And for all of you listeners, if you're watching us on the Coach Marti Angel YouTube channel, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you know when we go live again. And the Everyday Jefa, at the Everyday Jefa, you can find Bessy, and at JefaHQ, and the Latina Foundation, and the Austin Latinas Unidas. She is a powerhouse. Gracias por estar aquí. It has been a pleasure, hermosita, chula. Right, I'm
Thank you
going to
so
say
much.
mija because I can, right? Because I could be old enough to be your mamacita. So I'm so happy for everything that you're doing, and juntas podemos más, and it's so great to see you guys. I feel like I'm living my legacy. My legacy is to leave a legacy of Latina leaders behind me. And even though I just met you, I just feel like I'm leaving her behind me, and that the Latinas are going to be well taken care of, and we're going to be able to see people that look like us, feel like us, talk like us, think like us, in the space of entrepreneurship, leadership, and all of that. So,
Thank you
gracias,
so much.
hermosa. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
opening the doors for, to be able to share my story and get out of my own way, and to become the thing that I know a lot of us would have wished we saw, but we're here now. And so I can't appreciate you even more so for everything that you're doing for our community.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hold on.